Now, we're staying on that boat issue because at the heart of Operation Sovereign Borders was the ironclad resolve that no people smuggling boats would be allowed to get to Australia. The difference between the Abbott government that stopped the boats and the Albanese government that's seen 3 illegal boats arrive in the past few months is that one government believed in stopping them, yet it's far from clear that this one does. On the weekend, the Prime Minister insisted that Operation Sovereign Borders was still in place.
Well, we will deal with any unauthorised arrivals consistent with Operation Sovereign Borders, and that's what we've done. And I do note Rear Admiral Saunter's very clear message that there's been no change in policy since 2013.
Well, that's simply not true. And I know because I was there when we planned Operation Sovereign Borders and there when we implemented it. And there were 3 specific elements to the policy that stopped the boats under Tony Abbott. The first, temporary protection visas for illegal arrivals who made it to Australia by boat. Second, offshore processing in Nauru and elsewhere for people picked up at sea by Australian naval personnel. And third, perhaps most importantly, boat turnbacks, so that would-be illegal migrants never became Australia's responsibility. But there was also a further vital, intangible feature that made Operation Sovereign Borders work. And that was the implacable determination of the then government to show that the way to Australia was shut. No ifs, no buts, no hand-wringing about international law, displacing our rights as a sovereign nation to decide, in John Howard's seminal words, our right to decide who comes to this country and the manner in which they come. Instead, what Abbott had, what Howard had, was a steely resolve, a resolution that illegal boats would never make it to Australia. This Prime Minister, unlike the one I served, is now making excuses for boat arrivals. Here he is, more or less saying that boat arrivals can't be helped.
Well, we have a very large coastline. What is clear, though, is that people who are unauthorised arrivals won't be settled in Australia. Operation Sovereign Border principles will apply, as they have been in this case.
Well, our geography hasn't changed. A large coastline didn't stop the Abbott government. Tony Abbott didn't make excuses about our coastline. As a country, a large coastline is one of the few things we can't change. But we can change how we deal with it, how we patrol it, and what we do with any boats we detect. Now, if needs be, we need to do what the Abbott government did and was prepared to do. Put people in unsinkable orange lifeboats, 12 nautical miles offshore, back in international waters, with just enough fuel to return to their starting point. Only we will never detect the boats we're not looking for. That's because we're not looking for them. That's the problem here. And the fall-off in patrols by the Albanese government is a big part of why we're seeing this resurgence in illegal boat traffic. And secondly, does the Prime Minister even have the ticker to do what his predecessors did, to turn boats back? Because that's now a legitimate concern.
I'm of the view that I would just find out. I couldn't ask someone else to do something that I couldn't see myself doing. And if people were in a boat, including families and children, I myself couldn't turn that around. I would want to make sure that they were safe and secure. That was the position that I came to.
Now, it's true that people smugglers have become inventive. It was because they'd started scuttling their boats a few years back, in order to prevent turnbacks, of course, that the Abbott government started using those orange lifeboats that couldn't be scuttled. Now, maybe they've started using faster boats, inflatables perhaps, we see them with the military, that can come to Australia, deposit their customers and then leave so far undetected. But instead of shrugging his shoulders as if this is some new fact of life, the PM and his team need to increase surveillance and patrols so that these boats, if there are new ones, can be intercepted before they make landfall. Now, any claim that In the age of satellites and drones, it's impossible to maintain 24/7 surveillance of the northwest Australian coastline. Well, that's a rank admission of defeat, a preemptive surrender to people smugglers. This Prime Ministerial claim that boat people arriving here doesn't really matter because, he says, and I quote, people who are unauthorised arrivals won't be settled in Australia. Well, Prime Minister, that's a bald-faced lie. It's a lie. Because the reality is that most of the 50,000 people who arrived illegally by boat under the former Rudd and Gillard governments are still here. Most of the people who went to Nauru for processing eventually made it to a first world country. Indeed, many were medevaced off Nauru and into Australia thanks to Kerryn Phelps and those other crossbenchers a few years back. Add in the reality of activist lawfare in our courts and the resistance of some countries to take back their own citizens, and the unpalatable truth is that boat people who get here under Labor invariably end up staying here under Labor. Worse still, if they're criminals under the Albanese government, well, they get let out into the community without any real monitoring. This is why it's essential that the boats must be stopped before they arrive. Now, 3 boats in 6 months is not yet a full-blown resumption of the people smuggling wave that threatened to become some sort of peaceful invasion. But it is a test. It is a test of this government and Prime Minister's resolve. And without much more evidence of strength than we've seen so far, then that's the dire prospect now before us.